Dr. Fontaine and invited guests, we'd like to welcome you to today's Spring 2026 capstone presentation. I've lost count of how many we've done. This has to be at least the 10th to the 12th. And we have a few more the rest of the week leading into Monday. But today we have Christopher Berry, who's graduating senior from professional pilot concentration. You know, I always say a little bit about students from my experience with them. I have to go way back to 4 years ago when he was an incoming freshman. Dr. Fontaine was out of the country, and the chief pilot at the time was out of the country. And I was on summer vacation with my son. I get a phone call in the middle of the night from Captain Berry and Christopher Berry needing to register for Texas Southern University. That's how I met the both of them. The experience has been great the last 4 years. Chris is an outstanding student. He's volunteered. He's represented the university on many occasions, speaking engagements. He's attended conferences, OBAP, one of them that he's been to probably every year, and will continue to go to them. We'd like to thank our partners from Southwest and United, and the chief pilot staff, and all the students for being here. We look forward to seeing what Chris will do moving forward. One thing we tell our students, we want you to become a member of the Texas Southern Alumni Association during concert at Indiana University. And Dr. Fontaine always says,
write that check back.
Write that check.
Don't play.
So first few years, you know, you're trying to get your hours and, you know, move on up to destination 225. But in about 10 years, we want some money back to support this program, correct? That's what we want. I think he's ready to go. No further ado, Christopher Berry.
Before you do that, let's introduce a couple of our guests that are here so they can introduce themselves.
Okay.
Billy McDonald, I'm a 1994 graduate, Texas Southern Aviation Management Program, and I'm currently flying for United, captain on the 737.
Captain Donald, 7-6 captain here in Houston, Texas Southern graduate, 1999, airway science management.
Oh. As they say in the country, tell them who you is.
Not quite a guess. Jeff Berry, I'm a captain over at Southwest and Chris's dad.
I wanted to start off by thanking everybody for taking time out of their day and listening to my case study about USAir Flight 1493. My name is Christopher Berry.
Hold on a second. Y'all come sit over here so y'all can see the screen. I think you fine.
Okay.
Just to start off, some key terms that we'll be talking about today. Most important one will be our airport service detection system. We'll get into more detail about that as we progress. Our RF aircraft rescue and firefighting, and our national transportation safety board. Introduction. So USAir Flight 1493 happened at LAX in 1991 on February 1st. Involved two major airlines at the time, SkyWest and US Airlines. It was a 737-300 and SkyWest Metroliner, Fairchild Metroliner, that made impact onto the runway at LAX. There was a total of 101 passengers aboard both of these aircraft combined. Just to give you guys a visual on how big each aircraft was, the 737, the large aircraft, was 109 feet in length, had a 94-foot wingspan, and a height of 36 feet. At max configuration, it would have had 149 passengers aboard. The smaller aircraft, turboprop Fairchild Metroliner, was a lot smaller, as you can see. 59 feet in length, wingspan 57 feet, height 15 feet, and at max config would have been 19 passengers. So let's talk about the crew a little bit as we get into our scenario. To start off, Captain Colin Shaw was 48 years old. He's been a captain with USAir for 6 years, and he was highly trained and a very competent pilot on 737. He had about 4,300 flight hours on that platform and a little over 16,000 hours in total flight time. First officer, David Kelly, like Captain Shaw, he's 32 years old, and he was also also qualified on the 737 and had a very good training record as he progressed through his flight career. He had almost 1,000 hours on the platform, 737, and had between 4,000 and 5,000 total flight hours. So for both Captain Shaw and First Officer Dave Kelly, it would have been a routine scheduled flight for them flying into LAX. So just to pretty much describe what's going on here and paint the picture for our scenario today. This is the METAR. So LAX is the reporting station on the second day of the month at 2:07 Zulu, which would be the time, and UTC. Winds were 260 at 6 knots, visibility is 15 statute miles, scattered at 30,000, and temperature was 14 degrees Celsius, dew point is 6 degrees Celsius. Altimeter was 3010, and remarks, which basically means it was automated weather with the pressure or precipitation sensor. All right, accident overview. Just to give a brief overview before we get into the details of the accident. Like I mentioned earlier, it was a 737-300 US Airways on final approach in the 24 left, which then had a runway incursion with the smaller Fairchild Metroliner. That aircraft was positioned on the intersection 45 of runway 24 left, which is located right here. There's a total of 101 people on board. 34 people were killed that night, and 67 people happened to survive. That collision created a fire, and then our airport rescue and firefighting group and medical team in Los Angeles then responded to the fire and saved the remaining passengers. So as we get into the details before our crash, SkyWest Metroliner start off on the south side of LAX, south side terminal of LAX at Terminal 6 to be exact. They talked to ground controller, or clearance delivery, excuse me, which then gave them clearance to taxi via Charlie, Kilo, Echo, and then originally hold short at 24 left at the start of the month. I want to talk about a little bit on what goes on the air traffic control side as far as managing all the aircraft in and around the airport environment. So they use three main things. The first one we talk about today are flight progress strips. So basically, at least back then, it was all physical, so pieces of paper. Now they moved over to digitally, but it would have all the aircraft's information. So for example, the call sign, tail number, the type of equipment that would be on board the aircraft for IFR flights, the departure squawk code, and then different altitudes headings that would have been given from the controllers. What's important about that today is that night, LAX, they ran pretty much a condensed version of what they would normally run set by the FAA. So for example, you would start off in your clearance delivery at the gate, and then you would move through the hierarchy. So clearance delivery, ground controller, and then over the tower. But that night, to mitigate traffic flow in the LAX area, they were, not every plane, but some planes would have just got clearance delivery, and then they would, depending on where they were at the airport, they would go straight over to the tower. So that's what actually happened with SkyWest Flight 5569. Our next tool that air traffic controllers use at airports would be our automated surface detection system. Basically, it's a radar that detects all aircraft on the ground, and it's a digital display that the air traffic controllers have. I have a diagram of the airport, as you can see here, and then each plane will be labeled. So for example, this plane taking runways of Boeing 767-300, A320, another A320, so you can see. Another key thing about that too was that night, that system was implemented at LAX, but since technology back then wasn't the best how it is today, that system was very prone to breaking. So that night it actually was inoperable. Last one is using our eyes. So the control tower was located on the far aft portion of the airport. This control tower was in operation from 1961 to 1996. Now it's located further up, but at the time it was located further aft, and they had a lot of different visual obstructions in the way, for example, these lights, and they're scattered all around the terminal. But specifically, these four airport lights that lit up the ground ramp block the visibility of intersections 47 and intersections 45, which is now known as Echo 10. That's important too because, like I talked about earlier, when that SkyWest was taxiing down Kilo, they requested an intersection departure for runway 24 left at intersection 45, which is pretty standard for smaller aircraft. It helps mitigate traffic flow, and depending on performance calculations, it's pretty standard. You can take off. You don't need the full runway to take off.
Yeah.
A little bit about the controller that night. She was a full performance level controller. She was at our post for 2.5 months. After a year, or after a month doing her job, they do what's called an over the shoulder evaluation, which basically an examiner comes in and they pretty much sit with you the whole day and they write down any deficiencies that you might have as a controller. So some of the deficiencies that they wrote down for that day was two main important ones. The first one was a loss of awareness, and then the second one was a misidentification of an aircraft through the use of an incorrect call sign, which she actually did in our scenario. I'll kind of point it out when she gets.
That's very, very, very important in this whole scenario, that you guys capture this piece right here.
And then the next two, failure to complete two required coordinations with other controllers, which is called CRM. We talk about that a lot here at Texas Southern and in the aviation industry. CRM stands for Crew Resource Management. The failure to issue required advisory to any aircraft. So, for example, she didn't she really wasn't supposed to let the USAir Flight know, but it would have been a good thing to say like, hey, caution, airplane on the runway at the time. So now talking about ground, how it incorporates with our airsides with our flight 1493, just look in the top right corner. At this point in the night, we just talked about this SkyWest 5569. They were told to hold short of intersection 45, which is Echo 10. SkyWest flight 5569 is holding short of 24 left. We have the Southwest 737 that's holding short of full length of 24 left. And then we have the West Wings turboprop, which is holding short of, I believe, I think it's Echo 9 or something. But that plane was getting ready to cross over the runway and then taxiing into the terminal. I want to talk about a little bit about the Metroliner lighting, because this is going to play a very important factor as we move on in the scenario. So as far as SkyWest's SOPs at the time, standard operating procedures, they wouldn't turn on their strobe lights and their landing lights until they get landing clearance, or takeoff clearance, excuse me. So as I said earlier, this plane is already at that 45 intersection told to taxi into position and wait, which means to line up and wait on runway 24 left, so it would be in the middle of the center line of 24 left. So that becomes important is, let me kind of explain, these right here are called our nav lights. These right here along the wing and along the, it's kind of blurry, but along the engine cowling, this would be your position light, which is also located on the aft end of the airplane, and this is your ice light, which kind of illuminates the leading edge of the wing for ice detection. But the biggest thing out of this is the beacon light, which is located on our front edge of our vertical stabilizer. At that angle that flight 1493 was coming into land on runway 24 left, the beacon light on the vertical stabilizer would have been out of sight. It would have been shining forward, and the way the plane was designed, you wouldn't be able to see it from that angle. And that's important here because this is a real picture at LAX. This is actually runway 25 left and right. The case happened on 24 left, which would be on the other side. But this kind of shows like what it looked like that night coming into LAX. So if we can just imagine this is 24 left, that SkyWest flight 5569 would have been located right at the end of the approach lighting system. So you can see as this is probably about a 3-mile final, it would have been really hard to see that aircraft if they just had their beacon lights and their nav lights on. And as you get closer, if you're not expecting to see an aircraft on the runway, you're probably not going to see it. So you're coming in, you're about 100 feet over the numbers, and if you touched on 1,000 footers, they probably had like 2 seconds to realize what was going on, that hey, there's a plane in front of us, and we got to do something about it, which unfortunately, it was too late at the time. This kind of shows, what happened, with the aircraft after collision. So like I said earlier,
Chris, remind me what the visibility was?
15 statute miles. So it was clear visual, flight rule conditions. So this kind of shows, just a diagram on the crash at LAX at the time. The crash happened right here on the north end of the runway. This is actually from the accident report, so it happened right here. They made contact with SkyWest Flight 5569, traveled about 400 feet, actually ran the plane over, traveled around 400 feet along the runway, and then veered off to the left, crossing this grass area, taxiway uniform, and then hitting an abandoned building, just west of the terminal complex. So now we'll kind of go through a live accident reenactment. I'm here with my team that will help me today. I will have SkyWest 5569, will be Kevin sitting in the back. ATC today, will be Brian. And then USAir Flight 1493 will be Ariel. Wings West 5006 will be following sitting in the corner. Barf will be Kevin. And City Ops will be Jesus. So as they get situated, I want to kind of explain what's going on the screen. So this right here, this wouldn't be the actual representation of the tower, but this is a control tower. At the time, due to sim limitations, I couldn't move the view to where the tower would have been located, which is back here.
Yeah.
So kind of have to work for that one. In the top right corner, this would be, this would be US Flight 1493. This would be Wings West Flight 50 or 5006 or 5006, crossing runway 24 left, and then this would be SkyWest Flight 5569.
SkyWest 569, number 2 at Tango, behind an Aero Mexico airplane.
Roger, hold short Tango for now. Aero Mexico will be moving in just a minute. When able, turn right on Tango, and then at 45, transition to uniform, taxi to runway 24 left.
Alright, Tango 45, uniform, 24 left, SkyWest 569.
SkyWest 5569, contact LAX tower on 133.9 meter.
Over the tower, SkyWest 569.
So right now, that SkyWest airplane is taxiing to the intersection of runway 45, and we would be holding short.
SkyWest 569 at 45, we'd like to go from here if we can.
SkyWest 569, taxi up to and hold short of 24 left.
Roger, hold short 24 left.
USAir 1493, expedite your descent through 4,000 as much as practical it would. There will be traffic passing above you to land on the south side.
We'll expedite the descent through 4,000 for traffic. USAir 1493.
USAir 1493, thanks for your help. Contact Los Angeles Tower on 133.9er at runway
339. Good night.
I'd like to add too, due to sim limitations, this is actually a Wing Bravo, not the actual turboprops and the 737. But like I explained earlier, USAir 1493, 737 short final, turboprop crossing, and then the Metro liner that's about to enter the runway.
Localizer and glide slope captured. Reduce speed to 138. Set flaps 30. Landing checklist complete. USAir 1493 inside roaming established on final runway 24 left.
SkyWest 569, taxi into position and hold runway 24 left. Traffic will cross downfield.
Okay, 24 left, position and hold with SkyWest 569. Landing light, strobe light on, takeoff checklist complete.
5006, you back with me?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought I lost you. Taxi across runway 24 left, contact ground 0.65, went off the runway, traffic will hold position.
Sorry, we thought we lost you. We apologize.
No problem. Sundance 518, cross, taxi across runway 24 left, contact ground 0.6, went off the runway, good night.
I'd like to pause right there real quick. That Sundance, that's what I was talking about earlier, that miscommunication of call signs, that would have been West Wings 5006. So guys.
USAir 1493 for the left side, 24 left.
246 heading 270, contact Los Angeles, departure good night. USAir 1493, cleared to land, runway 24 left.
Clear to land, 24 left, USAir 1493.
So as of right now, that USAir Flight 1493 is on final approach, runway 24 left. In reality, it would have been at around 100 feet, already stabilized, just normal approach, visual approach at the time. So, as the scenario is going on right now, there's nothing really out of the ordinary for Flight 1493. On the pilot side, of course, there's a runway, or airplane on the runway, but at that point, they might have seen it, they might have not seen it, so just keep that in mind.
You're coming out 500 feet, bug plus 12, sink is 7. Check.
So here's that Flight 1493 on the final approach, they're about to touch down on 1,000 footers.
Touchdown, reverse thrust.
As they make touchdown, they do their airplane checklist, reverse thrust, spoilers, auto brake, and then they make impact with the aircraft, and then they'll assume veer off to the left and hit. It's not depicted in the simulator, but there would have been an abandoned building in this area.
Southwest 725, just remain off the runway at this time. Winds 5212, wind 240 at 8, cleared to land, runway 24 right. Use caution, we just had an aircraft go off the runway in flames.
Tower City Ops.
City Ops Tower,
24 left will not be closed. Direct traffic for 24 left to 24 right.
City Ops affirmative. Ops 38, has anybody checked the runway 24 right for debris yet?
Negative, we're trying to get some injured people help.
Okay, thank you. All units, Los Angeles Tower, aircraft accident runway 24 left at Tango, and the second crash site of Lima and Delta. Runway 24 left closed, emergency equipment responding.
Tower ARF-1 responded from station 1 to runway 24 left.
ARF-1, runway 24 left is closed, you are cleared onto the runway via uniform.
ARF-1 entering runway left, runway 24 left via uniform.
Those ARC response, it turned out the station would have been located on the southern end of the airport. Can't really see it due to the view, but they were kind of make their way this way and cater to the aircraft in the area.
Tower ARF-1 on seeing two aircraft involved heavy fire.
ARF-1 Roger,
ARF-1 initiating fire suppression and rescue operation.
copy ARF-1.
Tower ARF-1 requesting medical response and additional emergency personnel.
ARF-1, emergency services responding.
ARF-1 continuing suppression and victim assessment.
That is the end of our live accident reenactment. As we move into visual photos of after the crash and what after the events of this accident. There you see there's ARC right there indicating to any survivors and escapees trying to get out the aircraft. And the destruction and debris that was caused through impact. As far as the air rescue and firefighting crew, they immediately reacted to the crash on runway 24 left. They used rapid deployment foam to suppress any fires that were on the airplanes. I like to add to that originally, it was actually the fire department that realized that two aircraft were involved. So when they responded to the scene, they were helping all the people on 737. And then one of the firefighters actually realized, hey, there's a propeller right here, what's going on? So they immediately relayed that information to City Ops, and then of course Tower kind of started to figure out what was that missing aircraft, so.
What are those photos from?
What was that?
Where are those photos from?
These are just generic firefighting photos, cause I mean, at the time, a lot of the photos were blurry, and I don't want blurry photos in my PowerPoint.
I think the only thing that's throwing me off is that, if I'm not mistaken, this accident happened around 6:15 or 6:20 in the day.
Yes, sir.
You
So
know
that's 6:07.
Are we doing?
So it was February, so in LA, the sun goes down like 5:30, so at that 6 o'clock time, it would have been already dark.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So medical procedures, LA and the medical teams at the airport, set up temporary medical triage areas, which is basically a medical tent, and they set up right by the crash site. They catered all the injured passengers and crew members that were on board, and, the more severely injured passengers were then immediately rushed over to the local, Los Angeles Medical Center. Some big contributing factors that we talked about today have been the inadequate ground radar system. It being inoperative at LA at that time was a pretty key factor into the crashes happening, because that's one of the main sources of management for air traffic control. So if you don't have your main tool with you, you gotta find something else to back it up. Poor visibility of the smaller aircraft too, due to the control tower being in a pretty far away sort of section of the airport. They didn't really have a good visibility of what was going on. And of course, high workload and communication breakdown to the control tower. I had research somewhere and it said that LA only lands about a plane every like 50 seconds. So you can see how high paced of an environment that was. And for the controller to only be on that station platform for 2.5 months, it's kind of like she was just thrown into the deep end pretty much, which didn't help the case at all. The effects that happened at LAX that day after our crash was that the airport was partially shut down. Runway 24 left was closed for approximately 6 to 8 hours. Runways 24 right initially was closed. I couldn't find the amount of time that it was actually closed for, but after they cleared out debris, they reopened that reopened that runway. And runways 25 left and right stayed open that whole time, and LAX did a limited capacity operations for the rest of that night. This is sort of like a picture of all the victims that were on the aircraft and where they were sitting. So in the red would be your fatalities, orange serious injuries, minor injuries, and you can see as towards the front end of the aircraft, that's where a lot of the fatalities took place, and it kind of tapers off as you move further out. The accident investigation. So according to the NTSB, the probable cause was definitely human error. Failure to manage all the aircraft around the airspace and on the ground, and the local controller lost situational awareness, which was a big key factor in the crash. So as we talk about the legal and financial and reputational impact, multiple lawsuits were filed against US Airways and the Federal Aviation Administration. Settlements were reached rather than the government having to do long trials. Even the National Transit Safety Board influence really caused these trials to be shortened. And focus was placed heavily on air traffic control errors, like we talked about. The financial impact, USAir faced significant compensation payouts to victims. Those costs included aircraft, victims, their families, and operational disruptions. Insurance covered a part of the financial impact, but there were still long-term liability costs that were substantial. Overall, the cost was likely to be around $70 to $100 million at the end of the day. And then some of the reputational impacts that it's had on not only USAir, but aviation as a whole. Serious public distrust, there's a lot of damage in that, and increased scrutiny of airline operational safety culture, pilot to controller communication, we talk about CRM, and accident became a key case study, not only here at TSU, but in aviation or airline training. And then also contributed to an industry-wide push for modern radar ground systems. Like we talked about, that push for modern radar ground systems, automated surface detection equipment, improved runway incursion procedures, and enhanced air traffic controller training and communication protocols, like we talked about CRM. So to summarize today, the accident reshaped how airports and airlines think about runway safety, liability, and shared responsibility between the pilots and controllers, and also ground crew. These are some of the citations that I used for my research, and that's it.
USAir, what about the, and I may have missed it,
The
what about
SkyWest
SkyWest?
aircraft, I'm sorry, I didn't mention that, but on the SkyWest aircraft, all 12 of there's 2 crew members and then 10 passengers, all of them perished that day, as they were running over by the 737.
So the 34 killed was total or 30?
Yes, sir, total.
So, yeah.
Any other questions?
Having operated out of LA, one thing that kind of struck me as odd was that they were actually landing on 24 left. I'm sure Billy probably caught on that pretty quick. Today they land on you land on 24 right, take off exclusively from 24 left in normal operations. From your research, were you able to ascertain whether or not that was a direct result from this accident that they actually split the takeoff and landing runways?
I'm sure it was, but at that point in time, I saw that they were doing they had 4 runways and they all take off in the same direction. Due to traffic flow that night, they were landing on, they were taking off runways 24, 25 left and 25 right, and then they were mainly doing landings on the right runway. Okay. So that might have been where the confusion was made. Like I said, if I go back to this slide, where's the control tower? There you go. If I go back to this slide, that middle part was, I guess, out of the picture in that case. So normally it would have been clearance, ground controller, and then tower. Without having that ground controller to, I guess, separate aircraft on the ground, you're then putting more workload for that tower controller, which is also talking to departure center and managing those aircraft coming in. So that's kind of where a little mishap probably happened.
Were there any legal ramifications for the tower controller?
No, she actually didn't face any legal troubles from it, which is kind of surprising.
You know why they moved that tower?
Yes, sir. So, I think it was 6 years later, 1996. Or 5
What
years
year, you know why they moved that tower?
I'm sure the new one is a lot bigger, and that one's kind of out of date and further after the airport, so you would have a better, I guess, visual of the whole airport in a newer location. That's it.
That was the age of the tower, but there was something else.
I guess technology, a little more space.
Well, there's a reason why they didn't put the new tower right by the old tower, is what I'm saying. Why did they completely relocate that tower?
Not too sure.
Anybody know?
It's like a restaurant, isn't it?
No, it was the sun.
The sun?
Because what they were saying was there's so many blind spots that we're getting sometimes during the day because of the sunset, that they put the tower, much taller tower, you remember, on the other side of the airfield. And one of the reasons why they did that in 1996 was because of the inability to see certain parts of the airfield and the sunlight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Dr. Fontaine?
Well, look, Chris, anytime a student can get up there and, your preparation is astounding. I mean, you got there, no notes, you know what you're talking about. You've involved every facet of what we, have determined to be necessary in a capstone. I think good utilization of the ground, ground operations, the airport operations folks, the upper folks. I think that you highlighted that there's a communication issue, also a workload issue. I like to hone in on those things that have to do with CRM and also, workload. Seems to me that, more scrutiny probably could have been added to the air traffic controller as far as rest time and so on and so forth. But I thought you did a really good job of pointing out that just a couple months before this incident, this particular air traffic controller had already been, not written up, but this is part of her actual training, where folks saw that she was, making mistakes for identification purposes and radio communication, which is evident, on your piece. Go back to your piece one second, let me hear you that audible again.
Yeah,
When I just did,
Yeah.
communication, very good.
okay, so Winds West Flight, 5006, unintelligible transitions to tower. And then the next part was tower 5006, you back with me? Winds West 5006, yeah.
And then it missed what tail number.
Yes,
Right?
that's the time, yeah.
Exactly. Which to me caused some confusion, that resulted in what happened here, to me. But no, I thought you did an excellent job pointing it out. I'm not sure it gets that dark in LA at 6 o'clock. Yeah, it's overlay. I've lived in Redondo Beach for a couple of years. Pretty familiar with LA weather, but, no, excellent usage of the visuals. I think you gave us a good opportunity to kind of see how it looks, on runway 24 and all that in LAX. And, I thought your team, good job team. Brian, great job on the readouts, fam, and so I thought all you guys did really well and positioned yourself well. I appreciate you leading from noticing where the airport operations office is in LAX, which you call out appropriately from the south side, and that the vehicles actually leave from that area going out to the airfield, and making sure that folks don't just drive out to the damn airfield, because trust me, they're getting towered to tell them, give them clearance and all that. Even if there's an accident, they don't wanna have 2 accidents in the same day. So, you know, people forget that, oh, they just went out there. No, they didn't. Right. As LaGuardia is a prime example of a situation where the same controller gave 2 different call-outs, which caused a fire truck to actually enter the damn runway with a landing aircraft. And that, you know, anytime one person makes that kind of mistake, it really makes you wonder about a lot of different things. If 2 people make a mistake, you kind of go, oh, they just miscommunicate. But it's the same person making a mistake, like, wait a minute, you know, what were you doing? Or what were you thinking about, right? And so, appreciate your due diligence, my man, and congratulations on your graduation. If you remember, I picked Chris to fly in the new airplane, and we thought that was a grand day at TSU when that happened, right? When you got a chance to fly that new airplane in, and brand new one.
2 years later.
And then you look up now, man, and we got 12 brand new airplanes, and getting ready to get a 13th one. The multi-engine just got to, it's built now, it's sitting over in Austria.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're flying it back to Buffalo, New York, and then it'll come down to Dallas.
DA-42?
Huh?
DA-42?
DA-42, brand new, completely laid out, air conditioned, the whole works, FADEC, the whole bit. And so we're very proud of that. It'll be here, second week of June, arriving in Houston. So real proud of that, but you kind of started the trend of, yeah.
Oh, not a question, but I guess kind of for the other students and also for the challenge you, but this incident, it sparked off something called the USAir's 5 and 5. The old heads in here all know about that. US Airlines almost got put out of business by the federal government because of their safety record. I think this was the 2nd or 3rd incident, correct me if I'm wrong. But then between the years of I think it was 1988 and 1993, they had 5 fatalities, crashes. And the FAA, DOT actually almost pulled their operating certificate because of their safety program. So a lot of stuff y'all are learning about today in CRM classes are the same things that we're learning about when we go back for our recurrent training, and a lot of references put back on US Airways and 5-5, not as a way of shaming US Airways, but showing how other airlines can learn from their misfortunes.
Yeah, yeah. The CRM portion, when I got here in 2018, CRM went in the curriculum. And one of the things at Continental that we really pushed hard was this whole issue of improving CRM. Now, one thing that was said, USAir was sued by some of the families, right?
Yes, sir.
What were they sued for?
Exactly, I'm not sure.
Because I you know, on this particular, because that's what made me think about when you just said that. On this one, I'm not sure what the fault was from, other than their safety practices that they made.
I think that probably had it. From what I remember on this, there was talk that the pilot should have saw that airplane.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah. On the runway?
Yeah, because like you said, at 6 o'clock, it's still enough light that you might be able to see.
Yeah.
And I think that was, it's kinda, you get an accident, you sue everybody. So,
Yeah, you
I
do
think,
that. You
I
do.
think that was, I remember from other, there's a lot of TV shows about this crash, but I think that was one of the things that was questioning, how come they didn't see that aircraft on the runway, even when it was still.
1991, correct?
Yes, sir.
1991, so it does come back to this whole thing about this repositioning the tower. So, the tower actually could have helped that situation out as well. But you're right, you know, and we're sitting here with some, you know, 4 pilots, airline pilots that are sitting here in this room. I can tell you on the 15-mile visibility at
You
6
should
o'clock.
have saw that.
I saw that.
That's what I was sitting here thinking, I'm like.
Yeah.
Wasn't in that.
The Metroliner on that airport, or the lights on the Metroliner were actually, like the illumination was below FAA standard at the time. So, I mean, it would have been as bright as it normally is. I don't know.
15-mile visibility at 6 o'clock at night in LA on a runway that's that wide.
What about ground clutter and then line up exactly with the
6
center
o'clock.
line stripes?
And that's,
Sunset.
and this isn't something you even be able to see through your research,
That's what
but
I'm
from
saying.
from local
That's
knowledge
what
and
it-
operating there,
yeah.
you can see that.
The only thing I'll give you is what I told you, is one thing nobody talks about is sunset.
But yeah, at 6 o'clock though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's hard to make an excuse for not seeing an aircraft that is sitting on the runway.
And the
I
other
mean,
thing,
it's hard to me to not to, you know, to justify. If you told me with 3-mile visibility, something like that, or, you know, overcast,
Right.
something, but you telling me 30,000, 15 miles, clear as day, you know, I don't see how I missed that.
the other thing that kind of struck me is weird from listening to the transmission calls. Tower did call out,
Yeah.
traffic's gonna be in position.
Position.
So that, the 737 that came in should have heard, and not to second guess them, one of those 2 pilots should have heard, hey, there's gonna be traffic in position. We're coming to land. I didn't see anybody take off. Where's that airplane?
Right. See, that's the thing. And that goes back to the whole thing with water too. Is that somebody should have called back and said, wait a minute, did you just give them clearance to cross? See, there's a lot of things you gotta listen for. People think pilot is just, you know, A, and it's a lot of that, but you also gotta have a little bit of this judgment.
Yeah.
Like, damn, he just gave that fire truck a cross. Wait a minute, what runway was that? I'm calling back. You know, which runway? Because just for clarity's sake. Minor point, Christopher. Minor point. In 1991, was it position and weight or position and hold?
It was, taxiing in position, I think, I was talking to my dad about this yesterday, after the crash, they then changed the terminology to line up and wait, to make sure there's no confusion after
That
that,
was long, yeah.
so.
It was position hold up until 2010,
Yeah.
2008,
Oh, at
2000.
least somewhere like,
It was,
yeah.
ATO standard was line up and wait, cause I was operating in Europe after this accident.
Yeah.
Right.
It was line up and wait ATO, but FAA was position hold, and that changed after I got to Southwest. So I'm thinking that was
Position hold.
Position hold.
Yeah, that's right, cause in Europe, it's always line up and wait.
Wait,
it's always
wait,
been line up and
Yeah,
wait.
we adapted to make it one standard.
Right.
And we had, when did we adopt? That was 2010.
Around 2010.
2010.
Yeah.
Wow, it's been that long?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a long. When I got to Southwest, we were still positioned and hold, and then when that transition period took about a good 6 months to retrain the brain.
Yeah. Well, the last couple of days when we done have these capstones done, I think that, one of the things that's been evident, and a lot of the evident pieces that I wanna bring up is the fact that it's not all the time the pilot's fault, completely. It could be somebody else's fault, but it also creates an environment where what we're talking about is situational awareness, right? Situational awareness. The great thing about having a ton of hours is that you've seen a ton of things. And you've heard a ton of things. And when something doesn't sound right or look right, it's more evident to someone with a hell of a lot of experience than someone who hadn't seen it maybe but 2 or 3 times, maybe 4, okay? And so it's amazing that this pilot had that much experience, and seriously, 2 pilots missed that airplane on the runway. It's hard
I never-
hard
Would you call
to,
that complacency? I mean, they had clearing a million and coming in just like any other approach. You think they got
Confirmation
you
bias.
Explain that.
Because you're used to not seeing an airplane on the runway, so it could be there, but your mind is telling you they cleared to land, so surely there's not an airplane on the runway.
they call that something too.
Expectation of confirmation bias.
Right.
But also I wanted to say, even if,
That's it.
and for those of you all who are flying, even if it's not the pilot's fault, you died with your mistakes.
There you go.
And with other mistakes. So when Dr. Fontaine was talking about situational awareness, you always have to be aware. Because even if somebody runs on the runway or something else happens, the captain's dead. They're dead, even if it's somebody else's fault. And that's why we get paid so much. Because you die with your mistakes and you kill other people.
Other people, yeah.
So I wanna say this, Friday United, I was flying from Mesa. I was in Syracuse, and I don't know can't remember the runway configuration, but we were cleared to cross the runway. But I was listening, and there were a couple of fighter jets that were coming in to do a low pass. The FO tells me, he says, hey, we're cleared to cross. I was like, well, ask him one more time. I said, I just didn't feel right. And so he asked control, and control was like, yeah, you guys cleared to cross. Push the power up very slowly, and right when I looked out the corner of my eye, I'm like, God. Controller comes on, sorry about that, Mesa, well, whatever the call sign was at the time, and I'm like, sorry, you know what I mean? So, I say all that to say this.
And you shook up.
Yeah,
From that low pad.
absolutely. Roscoe Evans was he's the one who got me into flying.
Yeah.
One of the first things he told me, he was like, everybody's trying to kill you.
Yep.
He was like, he was my instructor, he was like,
The monkeys probably
Yeah.
trying to kill you out here.
he said that ground control, tower, yeah, he's like, everybody's trying to kill you. He was like, so you gotta go with what feels right. You're gonna get that feeling. And if you ever been out there flying, you've had that feeling and you probably corrected it, but you'll sense it, so.
But it's that experience though that gives you those senses that nobody else has. And it's hard to explain it.
It is.
But for a young FO, he
He
bright eyed, bushy tail, you don't know nothing. You know, the captains are a lot calmer because they just know if something doesn't feel right, doesn't sound right. Let me just check it out twice. And I know, man, that guy, he's dead now, but I know that guy who was landing in LaGuardia is thinking, damn, if I'd have just made that one more damn call just to verify.
And don't ever feel like you can't.
Right, check and verify.
Yeah, push the mic and say, hey, I just wanna make sure.
Yes, sir.
You know, cause it don't cost you nothing.
No.
You know, it don't cost you nothing.
Yeah, and I still wanna meet that flight attendant.
Yeah.
No, seriously,
Yeah.
anybody.
Absolutely, yeah.
I got to meet her one day, cause that story, man, when they found that girl, still in her seat, strapped in, okay, and lived. What, she lived with a broken leg or something?
I believe
Yeah,
so.
minor injury.
Mine, that's crazy. I gotta meet this girl. Yeah, cause first thing when that happened, I said, cause you know that the flight attendant's seat is right up against the wall, and I'm thinking, if the both pilots get, what happened to her?
Yeah.
Cause she's right there. And they ended up finding her out. But anyway, man, outstanding job, bro.
Yeah.